All right. We are waiting for it to show live, and it's showing. All right. Good evening, folks. We are W.A.R. We are resilient. I'm Michael Geary here with Travis Parrington, Oscar Mike Radio, and tonight we are joined by Rod Whitmer, the founder of the National Alliance to End Veteran Suicide. Welcome, Rod. How is everybody doing this Thursday night? We got the chat open for anybody that wants to, jump in and communicate. I'm just going to give the opportunity to Rod here to, talk about his organization. Travis, how's your week been?
It's been doing great. Great to be here tonight. We are resilient. We are W.A.R. Rod, great to meet you. So excited about tonight.
Very good. Mike, nice to meet you all. And to your audience, hello from Western Washington, near Mount Rainier. Normally my background shows Mount Rainier and one of the cool trails I've been on, but I said I'll keep it played today.
Nice. Beautiful out there from what I understand.
Oh, yeah. It's such a hiking location and just wonderful. Like there's a 90-mile, maybe it's 93, that goes around Mount Rainier called the Wonderland Trail. It's awesome. From waterfalls to high altitudes. And yeah, if you ever make it out here, check into it.
We'll do.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I always wanted to do is, take the time to go out and explore America. After spending, 13 years in uniform, I definitely wanted to take that time to go out and see, the treasures that it has.
Yes. Our nation is blessed, and there's no doubt that there's plenty to see and do. And yeah. So what are you waiting for, Mike? Are you ready to travel? That's kind of
I got the 2-year-old right now, so I got to wait a little bit for make her a little more, travel friendly.
Right. Well, I kind of stand in where most people would have said, Happy New Year to you. I more like, hey, let's make it a Happy New Year.
Absolutely.
Right? Meaning the responsibilities on us. No one's going to bring it to us or give it to us. Take ownership and go create it, right? I've recently gone through several things with Tony Robbins, if you've ever heard of him, the world's coach, right? And he's got a freebie coming up in January, actually in 2 weeks, I think. It's just like extraordinary. So I'm pretty lit up, right? And that kind of stands where I stand as the National Alliance. We're not a suicide prevention organization. We're really about a mindset organization, but I'll hold that off and we'll talk more.
That sounds very interesting. So I'd be interested to hear more about that distinction.
Yes, absolutely.
So I met Rod. There's going to be a course, OVF, Operation Veteran Freedom. And I've got some more information on our Facebook. It's also scrolling at the bottom. If you guys check the ticker, you've got the various websites that are on the National Alliance to End Veteran Suicide's website, NA2EVS.org, and then /OVF for the workshop, /champions to see what other folks can do, /events that are out there, and just to be able to check up and and the main page too, just .org, for the starting and see what everything has come together. Myself and Rod connected through that initially, and we'll be taking the course, which is a 3-week course, Monday night, February, was it 2/9/15?
The one that's coming up is the 5th. Yeah, February 5th. It was going to start on January 8th, but our trainer hit bronchitis, so he's pretty well, out for a few weeks. But yeah, on February 5th, you'll see
5, 12, and 19. So folks are available. Definitely look into that. You can sign up, through the what links at the bottom, or if you go to the Hellfish Haven website, we've also have an event started for it as well.
Perfect.
Do you want to kind of explain what that workshop's about?
Sure. I'll give kind of a quick intro of myself, though, first,
absolutely.
Just to kind of give some context. So I was Army. Actually, I'll just say that I grew up, did K through 12 in a little town called Orting, Washington, which is right at the base of Mount Rainier. And it, just the breadth of it is just extraordinary. And, finished high schools, went to an electronic institute in Portland. I was top of my class. I was being interviewed by the FBI to be able to go, and do spooky electronics kind of stuff. And then I came home over Christmas break and I'll just say that contradiction in terms called military intelligence gave me a call and made me an offer I couldn't refuse to really train me in top secret electronics. And so I joined the Army Security Agency it was in February of 2008. No, that's not right. Excuse me, 1974. I'm thinking, when did I start the National Alliance? 2008. Yeah. So I did 74 to 80. And most of the work that I did was at the training center at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Fort Devens was the home for the ASA, a lot of the Signal Corps kind of stuff that was there. But I taught in a wired cage with a guard dog running around it, the kind of, surveillance electronics that we used in the Army. And injured my back, got a compression injury, got out, finished the reserve time in 80, went into technology. Basically, I learned to be a geek, and I continued to be a geek. Started teaching for Microsoft programmers around the world, traveled to many countries and stuff, and then started to settle down, became a chief technical officer with a startup, and did that for a bunch of years. And then we were in a training course in Seattle, Washington, called the Self-Expression and Leadership Program. And it asked you to do something, clearly build leadership, but you had to go build a community project and then lead that project. Basically, not do it yourself, but lead it. And so with that, I looked into what was going on. I found homelessness around teenagers. That kind of touched my heart. And then this is September of 2008. I stumbled across the first statistic of veteran suicide from the VA. And back then it was 18 a day. And that hit my heart, right? I'd not done anything as a veteran, didn't join, the Legion or the VFW or none of those, right? I just kind of went into technology and was a geek. But at that point, it woke up my heart, right? And I said, not in my country are my brothers or sisters of arms going to be taking their lives. So I took on a project. It was in across 2 counties in the state of Washington, in the little town of Buckley. There's a river that divides the 2 counties. And we basically put our veterans in like a C-shaped circle where they were pointed to the speaker. And I had 5 mayors for the 5 surrounding towns, and they spoke to their veterans, and we brought resources together. And I had, it was just amazing. World War II was set next to Korea, set next to Afghanistan and Iraq. And, they were all sharing. And one of the vendors that was there brought up this young service member. He's in tears, right? And he looks right at me and he goes, "When are you going to do this again?" So like, this was awesome. And it was a project. I thought it was going to be done, right? Yeah. And, at that point, one of the other ladies came up as a Christian. She goes, "I've been praying about this, and I think God's calling us to do this." So I met with my chaplain pastor and started the conversation. And I said, "I've never been called into anything that I know of. What does it mean?" He says, "Well, you need this, 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 and this." I said, "How am I doing?" He goes, "Check, check, check." Right. So at that point, we formed our first nonprofit, which we called Vets Meet Vets. Gray-haired guys like myself meeting recent vets was the theory, and community keeps you connected. So we did a bunch of stuff at VA hospitals, and it was just extraordinary. And I near us in Tacoma, Washington, is what's called Joint Base Lewis McChord, JBLM, but it was Fort Lewis and McChord Field, right? But now it's a joint base. And with that, they have a Wounded Warrior Battalion there. And I was asked to have a booth there, Vets Meet Vets. And I get all these service members coming up and checking in with us. And they kept the young ones, even though it looked like couples, they go, "Is this a dating club for veterans?" and I said, "No." So anyway, we continued that for a while. 2011, we got smart, and we said what it really should be is the National Alliance to End Veteran Suicide, not something that sounds like a dating club. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions so far. I see somebody from Centralia. Cool.
Yeah, Jeremy's checking in. Let them know they came out there, and it's also saying, follow the paperwork to be able to fix the problem.
I guess my first question, Rod, is you took action to do something. what was your thoughts as you went through the after action report? Did you realize you had a bigger problem to solve here, or were you just happy to see that your efforts had success?
Yeah, I think at first it was the efforts having success, because we got lots of testimony, and many people were there, and even the World War II vet that shared with that circle what had happened when the truck blew up in Germany, and he never told his family about it, but he shared it with veterans. Right? His name was Hal, and they all said, "Hal, we know why you survived, so you could be with us today." Right? So it was just very moving. But I think it was as we move towards the formality of a nonprofit to create a 501c3. One of the things I did is I interviewed all of those mayors. And one of them, the mayor of Enumclaw, Washington, said, "Oh, you don't want to build one of those nonprofits. That's a lot of work." Right. So there was kind of like, "Oh, don't do that." And, but, at that point, it became more of a movement of the community than it was me. So I submitted. God is the leader. I was able to move forward, I think, with velocity.
So does your faith, because a couple of veterans, tell me that, their faith becomes a central component of their advocacy. So how does your faith relate to what you do? And, can you explain that to us, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, for me, it's, very, very important. The most important. I serve God and country and my family, and then works after that. Not work first, right? And so it's an important piece. And I think if you were to look at the National Alliance, or even what we had created before the Vets Meet Vets, it did not look like a faith-based organization. Reason being is I was starting to deal very much with the federal VA at VA hospitals, and I kind of seen that they push the faith-based organizations away. Meaning you can't do cross government and state and church. I guess that's the right word, church and state. And so there was they were treated differently. So I came across as, we are not a veteran service org, we're a veteran community org, a VCO instead of a VSO. And that caused us to look at it neutrally, to say someone could come to us. First off, if you look at our logo, it's actually got you probably maybe see a little bit here, but it's got an arm embrace. Now, it's not like this, like reaching down and picking somebody up, which would be entitlement. I had an 06 that commanded Naval Base Great Lakes, which was huge. And she said, "Don't do entitlement. Veterans don't need to be entitled to anything. Make them earn it, put them to work, because they need to be in work rather than thinking about themselves." So we did that. But one of our arms in our logo is that of a civilian. So you can hear, "Oh, thank you very much. Very good.
No problem.
Good job, Mike."
So there's a logo there.
Yeah, you can see dog tags hanging there, one arm in camo, one arm that's in, and that's an important piece. So with that neutrality, it says you don't have to be a veteran to make a difference. We also certainly didn't want to say, "Hey, we're out to evangelize you," or anything like that. But people know our hearts, and they see the love. And we'll use words once in a while, but most of the time it's that love and creation of community that really lifts people up.
Very nice.
Now the workshop itself, that's open to veterans family members.
Yes. Yeah. So okay, if I shift over and talk about OVF?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So while I was in that self-expression and leadership program, I stepped back about the beginning of the year. This is January. My wife and I and my daughter, we were in this landmark forum, a very expensive workshop. And the guy that led it was a Vietnam combat Marine. And that's kind of all I really knew about him, but he was awesome as a leader. Well, when I started that, I needed to be in community. I reached out to him when I seen him at that center, because that workshop I was doing was like 5 months long. Right. So I'd always be back and doing more. And I bumped into him. His name is Jan McHenry. And I learned that he was not only a combat Marine, he survived a mass casualty event. There were 100 Marines went up right on the DMZ, and only 5 came down, meaning 95% casualty. Operation Idaho Canyon, Mudder's Ridge is what it was called, and they were just overrun. And then there's 5 of them, and the colonel's on the radio. Well, how many of you left? And he goes, sir, we only have 5. And he goes, great, you're still a fighting unit. I'm going to send you more. Go on back out. So when they came home, they felt like pieces of meat, right? And, Jan had PTS tremors. I mean, his whole body would be shaking. And so this is in the 70s, right? Because he was there 69, came back in the early 70s. His daughter drug his butt to a neuroscience-based workshop. And, all of a sudden that his symptoms started to go away because they gave him a distinction about being responsible. You're responsible for your feelings, your moods, your emotions. Mike, you remember this from the workshop, and it's not like if you're doing this, if you can see, there's 3 fingers pointing out back to me, even though I'm saying you made me feel this way, right? Most of them are back. Take responsibility for that. He did. His symptoms went away. He said, what the heck is this? He went back to study it some more and got so excited about the possibility, thinking that he could lead it for veterans, that it took him 6 years to master it so he could teach it. And then he was about in year 1 or 2 of 10 years of teaching when he met us. So at that point, we kept saying, Jan, when are we going to do this for veterans? When can we do this for veterans, right? So finally, he retired in 2014, got permission. That's when we did the first Operation Veteran Freedom workshop at the VA hospital near Tacoma, Lakewood, or American Lake, it's called. And that workshop, it's really about neuroscience. It's about how our brain's wired up. So I'll just step back and say, what's the National Alliance about? I mentioned before about mindset. If I'm coming into circumstances as a victim, I'm trying to play this trump card. Yeah, but you don't understand. This is what happened to me, right? Meaning it's about, boy, look what they did to me. Jan came back that way. He blamed the military, blamed the Viet Cong, he blamed all of that stuff until he took responsibility. His brain didn't start to relax and start to get the fact that he's still alive. And all of that was a survival mechanism of the reptilian brain. He continued on and trained probably 35,000 people around the world, presidents of nations. And Mike can vouch for the skills that Jan McHenry demonstrates in the workshop. No matter what someone's dealing with, and he gets them to the point where they realize that our brain makes shit up. Something happens. The little kid in us says, why? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? If the answer is not coming to you from out there, brain makes it up. And it's usually in a very negative concept, negative context of something like, I wasn't good enough, I'm not worthy, one of those. So immediately as we got going, we said, let's shift that and let's have our veterans put their past in their past. So if you look at our website, you'll see that we're not out to end veteran suicide by lobotomizing our veterans or putting them on a cocktail. We're out not to have them survive, but to give them the mindset that they'll thrive. So we're really, really unique. Mike, any comment that you'd give about the workshop?
Yeah, no, the best thing that I liked about it is that it's not, about, changing yourself to the point where you don't recognize yourself anymore. It's making small changes that will make a big difference. And, that's the way that, a change of perspective and how that can, make a change in the end.
Right. We gave the example in there about, if Travis was a jerk, right? Because when I first met Travis, somebody told me he was a jerk. And I had to work with Travis, and I kept talking to Travis as if he's a jerk, right? Well, that didn't work. Okay, I know what I'll do. I'll be nice to the jerk, right? Well, that doesn't work. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll ignore the jerk, right? If we're standing in a concept that mom did this or dad did that, mom doesn't love me, whatever it be, you're in a context that has you stuck, and you will always treat them like a jerk, or they don't love you, or you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough. That's what you'll live in. And your brain is powerful enough to create that in your entire life. Once you take on another view to say, wow, my dad was also in the military. Maybe that's why he was an asshole. My dad was in World War II. Wow, he was there for, several years. I can only imagine what that was like. Wow, what if I had some compassion for my dad? Wow, what if my dad was actually doing that to show that he loved me? And what if dad was doing that because his World War I father did that to him? Just makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're up to. And something we just added recently, Mike doesn't even know about. There is a product out there called Life Book. And we brought it into our education program by partnering with Life Book for Military. And the thing to hear, it's not even on our web yet. So this is kind of a somewhat of a pilot introduction, kind of a concept of, hey, here's another educational example. So Travis, you can imagine if I were to, take you through a cohort, of about 7 or 8 weeks for an hour or two, you got to watch some videos, and we talked about maybe relationships. And then maybe we talked about finances, and maybe we talked about your character and things about your wellness and 12 areas of your life. And you got to see the belief system that you have created and go, wow, I think those people that make money are a bunch of thieves, right? That's one of your beliefs, right? So what's that going to do in your financial world? Well, you're going to sabotage everything around finances because of that belief, because if you're making money, you're one of those thieves. And your brain will protect you, right? So these 12 areas of the life, we then go through and look at and create a vision to say, what would my best life look like? And then with that, some of the strategies on how to get there. So you look at 12 areas of your life, and we do it cohort style. We just ran our first pilot. It finished right before Christmas. And one of the ones that just blew me away is I got a retired Army major that really moved into the chaplaincy and was very Christian, right? And many Christians will say, well, that's not, spiritual training. It's not about the Bible. It's, they call it secular training. And they'll poo-poo it because it's not Christian training. Well, this guy is kind of neutral, and he'll say, well, that's some pretty good stuff. I'll take that. Oh, I don't think that matches I'll leave that alone. So he looked at this whole thing, and immediately this Army major, right, that was being groomed to be a general before he got hurt and got out of the military, he came back and has already been feeding me with referrals for our next pilot, right? So normally these kind of trainings cost, thousands of dollars. We've got an offer, a Lifebook Military, that Mike, if that's something you think I should share later, we can, where people can, because of the pilot, get it for like half price. So we're making relationships with other companies to bring in their mindset tools that will cause a shift. And if we can get those veterans to shift, it benefits the whole community. And we're proving that it's been very, very successful. So I'll pause and see if there's any questions.
Well, not so much a question, but definitely a thought. Is there really, one of the things, because, being in the Marine Corps, a lot of this is, I can say it now, is we were brainwashed to believe
Sure.
that we could push through anything, that, if that wall is there, we're going through it. Do you find that veterans forget that aspect of their service, or they just can't deal anymore and need to be reminded?
Can't deal. I got to think through that. You can hear, their brain.
Well, when I say can't deal, like you get out of the military, right?
Yep.
And you're going from a high speed, low drag job, high operational tempo,
Yep.
to, hey, honey, the dog took a dump in the front yard. The garbage needs to be taken out, and your boss called.
Right.
right? You go from one state to another state, and all of a sudden, that inner savage, right? That inner warrior's kind of muffled, and if you're not around it, you forget it after a while. That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah, I hear you. And you can hear that's clearly we are a product of our environment, right? So in the environment, in the military, as you said, a lot of structure. There's mission, right? You're on mission. You're worried about the men around you, meaning you're not thinking really about you. You're worried about them. You got their six. You got their back, right? So
Right.
that's an important piece. When we get out of the military, I like to consider it that the umbilical cord's been cut. And because of the shift that happens in the environment that's after that, it's a spiral for most, unless they take on their next mission that's bigger than them. Because
And then Jeremy
go ahead.
Jeremy also added too, if what if it's happening because they were deployed to a toxic superfund that's caused a neurological or hormonal imbalance at the cellular level for the individual.
Absolutely. That environment could be very toxic. So you could say your brain's been hijacked, right? And one of our good friends wrote a book. It's called Randy Jensen, and the title is "Just Because You're Suicidal Doesn't Mean You're Crazy." Right? Meaning it's the brain hormones and all of that start to become new neural pathways. And if a neural pathway is used often enough, it becomes the default pathway. So if the thought process is constantly towards I'm not good enough, right? That thought pathway will prove itself true. And you'll sabotage everything in your life, right? If you can see it, you can manage it, you can shift it. So if you can see it, and that's where workshops will often do that. And that's what I'm loving now about Tony Robbins. I'll just speak that website, timetorise.com. Timetorise.com is Tony Robbins, January, I want to say 24th. Tony Robbins is famous for, let me get back to my web. Give me 1 second. It's actually the 25th through the 27th, 11 a.m. Pacific to 2 p.m. Pacific, and timetorise.com, Time to Rise Summit. Let me put it in the browser to make sure I got I think it's to RISESUMMIT.com. Tony, if you've ever heard about him, if you haven't, go on Netflix and watch I'm Not Your Guru. What Tony does is he's the why guy, but he clearly is, as we've talked, Travis, that state that you were in, Tony's all about state. Like if anybody's ever seen his Unleashing the Power Within, that's where people do the firewalk. Well,
Right.
since Zoom, that's where people now break the board, right? So he's going like, make your move, say yes, and you wake up the neighbors, but you're in such a state that everything shifts. So his event is free for you to experience some of the fundamentals, why you do what you do. It's kind of like our model of what we do in the workshop is exposing the neuroscience behind it. So you could then have a choice to say, if I keep doing that, being that victim or having this issue, rather than, I'll use a cancer example. Someone may have been diagnosed with cancer, and you might come back and say, wow, I got cancer, and that's your focus now. Rather than focusing on laughter and happy things, you're focused on cancer. You're going to go quickly. If you believe that cancer's got you, or you could say, hey, I've got cancer, but cancer doesn't have me, and start just moving like crazy, doing the laughter stuff, doing the I'll say chemistry changes that are needed, and that'll move you forward. So Tony's all about moving you forward. So I'd highly recommend people take this one out. It's just often. Did that work for you guys? Did you type that one in?
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying with that.
Yeah.
And then Jeremy put in, not dead yet, option 3.
Oh, what's that?
Jeremy put in not dead yet, option 3.
Option 3, yes, very good. And that's the key. And then say, okay, if that's what's so, It's kind of like you're taking on your next mission. Well, why not now plant a course that takes you to the moon? My dad, World War II vet, used to say a phrase. He said, Rod, he used to say a bunch of things. One while it was, you dumbass. But he'd say things like, if you shoot for the moon and you miss, you're going to get stardust. Where if you shoot for the telephone pole and you miss, you're going to end up in the mud. So why not plant just something about you thriving and your family just moving forward, and set aside the beliefs you had that have been holding you back or causing you to sabotage. But you need some neural training, some workshops. Come do our Operation Veteran Freedom. It's just about 7 hours, 2 hours on a Monday, 2 hours on a Monday, 2 hours on a Monday. And you'll get started, but definitely check out Tony's. It starts in 13 days, 18 hours. And last year when we did this, when we began with Tony Robbins, there were 2 million people in this Zoom experience. 2 million people. Every country of the world was there. I believe this one will probably hit about 5 million people, right? So again, go back to Netflix if you don't know Tony Robbins and look up the video, I'm Not Your Guru, right? Because yeah, anyway, I'll stop there and see what else is coming up.
Well, this has been really, encouraging to hear that, one, you found a way to take your faith and veterans advocacy and meld them together. And then two, understanding the power of the mind and how the mind can really affect, somebody, and how to, change those thought processes to get true change in somebody.
Yeah.
So, good stuff.
Thank you. And an important thing to hear is that, as you'll get in our workshop, you are not your brain. Your brain says stuff to you that's not very nice. It says, you stupid bastard, or you dumbass. It'll say things like that constantly. Or it'll say things, it'll just ask who out there might be in a significant relationship, right? Just think about it. There's probably things that you shouldn't say to your significant other, right?
Right.
You ever notice you say it anyway?
Oh, yeah.
Your brain goes, go ahead, do it. And then when you do it, it goes, dumbass, right? That's our brain. No, that's the reptilian brain. That is not this part of the brain.
I think for me watching enough daytime TV, I think it was Judge Mills Lane that used to say, if you give your tongue enough time, it'll act like a shovel and you'll dig your own grave.
Always. Right. So hear that the National Alliance, we're not a suicide prevention team. We refer to the VA. If you check out our web, there's something there I'd like every family member to hear. On the right bar, you'll see coaching into care. It's a VA program out of like North Carolina. The VA is not your father's VA. They now have what they call MYRECs, which are, I'll call them centers of excellence. Apparently North Carolina is the one about how to help the family. So there's veterans that have not connected, right, to be in group and be working and, trying to understand their brain chemistry, whatever it is. And the family members in regret. Now, if they do nothing and the veteran takes their life, right, the family members stand in there constantly. Thank you for that. And what this does is this coaches the mom or the brother or the neighbor to know what to say to their veteran, to have their veteran get connected to services, right? So that's so important, which really says it's back to community, right? We as veterans, that umbilical cord cut, well, go connect a brand new one to community and be there and be open and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, I hope that's been a little helpful. And there's other stuff on our web that's, pretty extraordinary. If you're interested in helping out in some way, like Mike, as he's been a workshop connector because he's attended the workshop. I think that's why I'm here this evening, right? Partly.
Absolutely.
Excuse me.
And there's the, if you scan the code there too, you can get pulled right up to their page. It'll show you everything about signing up for the workshop, and it is free of charge for folks because you guys have had people donate to be able to help ease that cost.
Absolutely. And that's our intent. If we can get this training, whatever module we're doing, my next request is to talk directly to Tony Robbins and ask for some of the pieces to be able to create some special, mindset and state change for our service members, veterans, and their families. Right. And, so that's who I am. And I'm pretty unstoppable. He's obviously, what's he at right now? Got 120 companies, $7 billion a year. when a president wants to be coached, which he's coached almost every one of them, it's $1 million to get this guy to coach you. Right. So he's extraordinary. So check out our web. One of the things I was about to say is that there is a link just going right now is champions. And what that does is helps you understand the context around veteran suicide, right? The number's always changing. Is it 18? Is it 22? Is it 30? Is it whatever? But really the biggest spike right now is the 1 year that's around separation from the military. Army calls that your ETS date. I'm not sure what other branches do, but there's something out there that started as etssponsorship.com. It's now changed because ETS is not in the language of Navy and Air Force, I think. And now they call
now it's Onward Ops.
Onward Ops, absolutely. So if you'd like to be a coach, if you want to call it that, they call it a sponsor, to help service members that are getting out. Because again, they got a year around their termination date, and around that year around that is the highest veteran suicide spike. So that Onward Ops is a place for the service members to get signed up, but it's also a place for those that want to coach them in community. Highly, highly recommended. I coach several, and I'm just lit up to know that the wisdom I've got and experience in my community will help someone that's going to live around Western Washington, as they get out.
Yep, I had a soldier that's coming back to Massachusetts from Fort Drum. I was his ETS sponsor. While it was changing names, we still were working as my sponsor, and then we had to wait 2 weeks while all the websites and platforms changed
Yes, exactly.
to be able to get back to communicate again. But it has been a big help to be able to work with these guys and be able to share our wisdom as vets and what we've learned through these these areas of what we've done or what we've seen as what's troubled us or what stopped us and what's been impactful to us, either positive or negative, to be able to allow these folks to know that before they get out of the service so they can prepare for it.
Right.
So that way you're not coming out in such a culture shock to people.
Exactly. I mean, if you think about most of us, we got out of high school and probably joined the military within a year. Many did anyway, or some were plus or minus. So we go from very high structure. Mom did everything, the laundry, and then we get in the military. They drive us around and all that stuff. There's things that we focus on that we don't. Then you get out. Now you get to go shopping. You get to go, and that stress is enough in itself, right? So anyway, hey, Mike and Travis, do I have time to talk about Race to Save Vets?
Yes.
Okay, so many of you know or heard of Relay for Life. Relay for Life is a program of the American Cancer Society. A doctor in Tacoma said, I think he had somebody was losing to cancer, wanted to help out with cancer research. So he started Relay for Life. So Mike, if you're going to put a URL in, if you could, racetosavevets.org. So RACE, the number 2, SAVEVETS.org. Racetosavevets.org. You can get it off the homepage of NA2EVS.org. But so as we were doing workshops and all that, and COVID hit, we went into Zoom, but we then started say, what can we do to inspire a nation of veterans? And I look back at Relay for Life, and again, starting in Tacoma, it's gone around the world. There's no platform out there that was like that went around the world for veterans. So we started to play with go-kart racing, right? And we were doing great, bringing in special forces units, and they were competing, and it was just awesome, right? We had this vision to say, we're going to get that cruise ship that's got the go-kart track on top and do national championships with the Army and the Air Force against the Marines and the Navy. Yeah, so the vision was great, then COVID hit. So at that point, we said, well, there's components of a race, like whether it be running or walking or rucking or go-karting or biking or motorcycles or, whatever it is, race is a race. So if you look at Race to Save Vets, the picture is a collage of like every sport you can think of, other than automobiles aren't in there, but they could be. And we said there's many nonprofits, and there's also many that are doing a nonprofit mission, but not yet a 501c3. So said differently, somebody creates a project, and they haven't found a fiscal sponsor yet that is a 501c3. So therefore, donations to them are not tax deductible. Well, someone can take them on, or in this case, a platform by the National Alliance called Race to Save allows an event to be built. I'll use one that we've got a walking group in Auburn, Washington, W.A.R. And they've been doing stuff and starting to help more veterans and stuff. And we said, well, let's create a race in April where we do this Race to Save. We bring in resources. So there's resources like vendors, different veteran programs that are there and all that show up, and the community shows up, and, it fundraise. Well, what we can do with the platform is share the finances. In other words, I'll use example. If someone is actually a 501c3 or a C4 or C10, like a veteran service org, I'll use the American Legion example. When people go through the donate process, it could say, do you want to donate to the National Alliance and Veteran Service or American Legion? So we're able to use this platform. We use runsignup.com or givesignup.org, same tool, to create these races. And so off of Race to Save, you'll go see Mother Rucker. That was a ruck march that just happened in October. Prior to that, you see the go-kart races, right? So it's like, what can we do to inspire around that 1 year when a service member's getting out? Think about their age. They're either probably 22 or 42, right? Roughly, right? And what's a 22-year-old do? They're out running, they're jogging, they're biking, they're in motion. So if we can capture that interest and build races around the nation that cause awareness of veteran suicide and cause collaboration, that these organizations come together and they're there in a booth. So I invite I call it hippotherapy, the equine therapy. The action of their hips is the same as a human hips. So somebody that's lost the use of their lower limbs, right, could be on a horse and they get the same action, right, without being able to walk. Anyway, we invite the equine therapies. We invite the different veteran orgs as resources to be there. So now connection happens, community's built, money's raised, and people have the time of their life. So
that collaboration is such an important factor too, is building that community, and even back onto the VA's program of the whole health, working the mental health and the physical health, and
yes,
and just ensuring that the veteran is taken care of.
Right. And that might be, thank you for mentioning whole health, Mike. Check out our homepage on NA2 and it'll take you to our whole health. So for the last 11 years, we've been a community partner to put on the VA's Mental Health Summit. Later was named Behavioral Health Summit. And last year, not 2023, but 2022, the topic was whole health. So we kind of map some of the programs that we do into those whole health areas. And it's patient-centered care. It's back to taking responsibility. You're asking for what you need rather than waiting for them to give it to you. You're the champion, not the doctor. Take responsibility, right? So that's kind of the model we work. So I think we're getting close, right, to your...
Yeah,
Travis
I
has got Oscar Mike Radio coming up next. What do you got tonight?
I got Mike Peterson from the People's Patriot Project joining me again, and you can check that out on Oscar Mike Radio on Facebook, YouTube, everywhere else. And but it's been great meeting you, Rod, and I think your approach to veterans advocacy is a refreshing, inspiring thing to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my call would just be to have people check out Champions, find a way to work together, and let's go save our veteran lives. On behalf of all of us at NA2, I salute my brothers and sisters of arms and thank you for your service and sacrifice to our nation. And God bless America.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
guys for
being
joining
American.
us this night for WAR. We are resilient. We'll see you guys next Thursday, and stay tuned for 2000 for Oscar Mike Radio with the People's Patriot Project, Mark Peterson with Travis. See you guys.